Hey everybody, we are up to chapter 3 in the book of Romans, where we're each day taking a little piece of scripture and talking about it. Today I'm in Romans chapter 3, and verses 1 through 10 or 11 is kind of how far I went today, so I want to invite you to read that if you haven't done so. A couple of months ago in worship, we were talking about our relationship with Jesus Christ and what Jesus did for us, and how he bridged the gap between our sin and our relationship with God. And if you were in worship, you might remember I used an example where I talked about how actually Bill Hybels was on a plane and he was talking to the guy sitting next to him, and they just got into a discussion, and the gentleman told Bill Hybels, he said, I'm just going to have to be good enough for God. What I do, I'm a good person. That's just going to have to do. And he said, you know what? Oh, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of the absolute worst person that you can imagine in your mind, and throughout history. Who's that been? And the guy replied, well, probably Adolf Hitler. So he wrote Adolf Hitler's name at the bottom of a page. Then he said, okay, now think of the best person throughout history that you can think of in your imagination. And the guy said, well, that would be Mother Teresa. And he wrote Mother Teresa's name at the top of the page. And then he said, now I want you to think about, in terms of being good enough, where between the name Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler does that mark, where does it sit? Where do you mark yourself as far as, being good enough? Somewhere between Hitler and Mother Teresa is what I have to do in order to be good enough. Where on the page would that be? And then he went on to explain, how Paul said in the 3rd chapter of Romans, it was in verse number 10, Paul said, there is no one who is righteous, not even one. So in Paul's conversation here, he is saying that even Mother Teresa on her own is not righteous enough to stand before God. It takes Christ standing with us on our behalf to make us righteous. So no matter where we would mark ourselves in that line between Adolf Hitler and Mother Teresa, none of us of our own accord are worthy enough to stand by ourselves. So thankfully, we have somebody on our side, and just something to think about as you go through your day. I wish you great peace and blessing. Hope to see you this weekend.